Welcome to WordBites, friend, where I share bite-sized messages that bring big-time changes to you. I'm Wumi Ademola. Last time, I began to share with you how to go for gold, how to obtain life's most ultimate prize, which is heaven and our heavenly rewards. It's true. Now, the Summer Olympics will soon start, and so many athletes are going to be competing for the gold prize. Everybody's going to leave their different countries all for one hope, all for one aspiration to obtain the gold prize. But the truth of the matter is, out of the hundreds of athletes that are going to be competing, only those who run in such a way as to win will eventually obtain the gold prize. Only those who, from the onset, intentionally go for gold will eventually get gold. And it is the same way in the Christian race, the most important race of all. The race, what's going on in Tokyo, is temporary. It ends on earth. But the eternal race, the Christian race, which you and I are running right now every day of our life, it's going to determine our eternity. So it's more important than anything. So it's important that we, just like athletes in the natural, just as they have to intentionally from the onset go for gold, we as Christians have to go for gold so that we get gold, so that we get to occupy our heavenly mansion and we get to receive our heavenly reward. That's what Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9 verse 24, when he said, "In a race everyone runs, but only one person gets first prize. So run your race to win." And I'm going to add, go for gold. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, he gives three very important keys. If you want to go for gold, if you want to get gold, if you want to occupy your heavenly mansion and receive your heavenly rewards, there are three things you need to do. We talked about the first last time, which was in verse 25, when he said we are to deny ourselves. Today, let's go straight into talking about the second thing that you must do. And he says in verse 26, Apostle Paul says, "So I run straight to the goal with purpose in every step. I fight to win. I'm not just shadow boxing or playing around." So here, friend, is the second thing you need to do if you want to obtain the prize, if you want to get gold, if you want to get your heavenly mansion and your heavenly rewards. You need to keep your eyes on the goal. He says, "So I run straight to the goal." Now, you can only run straight to a goal that you keep in sight. So in other words, what Apostle Paul is saying here is that if you want to get gold, you need to keep your eyes on the goal. And in our case, our goal is heaven. You need to keep your eyes on heaven, and you need to keep your eyes on the heavenly rewards. Many people get distracted when they take their eyes off the fact that this world is not our home. It is just temporary. And they get so fixated about the earth and things that are going on in the earth, when actually we need to keep our eyes on heaven, that this world is not our home, we're just passing through. Our real home, our ultimate goal is heaven. I tell you, if you as a Christian keep your eyes on heaven, you will get to your goal. But when people get distracted and they take their eyes off heaven, that's when Christians begin to do things they ought not to do. And so Apostle Paul says here that in the race, the Christian race in our case, he keeps his eyes straight on the goal. You need to keep your eyes on the goal, which is heaven, making heaven and obtaining your heavenly rewards. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1 and 2 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses," so many people have gone on before us. They've made it to heaven and they're looking from above, looking down. Apostle Paul says we're surrounded by so many witnesses. And then he goes on to say, "Stripping off every unnecessary weight and the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us." Listen to this. Let us run this Christian race with endurance and active persistence, the race that is set before us, looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of our faith. And the Bible says concerning Jesus Christ, who for the joy of accomplishing the goal set before him, he endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. That was what Jesus did when he was on earth. You need to understand that Jesus Christ was tempted with every sin by which we are currently tempted. He faced it. Think about it. He faced temptation to commit adultery. He faced temptation to lie. He faced temptation to be bitter, to harbor malice. Think about it. Whatever temptation exists on earth, Jesus faced it. But you want to know why he didn't fall? He did not fall because the Bible tells us here that he kept his eyes on the goal. He kept his eyes on the goal, which was to occupy the right-hand side of the Father. And because he kept his eye on the goal, the Bible says he obtained the goal. He made it to the cross. He endured the cross. He despised the shame. And today we're told he's seated at the right hand of God. You and I must do the same thing. If we are serious about making heaven, and if we are serious about receiving heavenly rewards, which, by the way, far outweigh whatever riches you may obtain on earth, we must keep our eyes focused. We must, like the Bible says, be heavenly minded. Colossians 3:2 says, set your mind and keep focused habitually on the things above, the heavenly things. Christian, you need to keep your mind focused habitually, not occasionally. It's easy to think about heaven when you're in church. It's easy to think about heaven when you hear messages or sermons on heaven. But if you want to make heaven your eternal home, the Bible says here, you need to set your mind and keep focused habitually on the things above, the heavenly things, and not on things that are on earth, which have only temporal value. I tell you, my friend, the more you stay focused on heavenly things, the more you're going to yearn for heaven, and you will not go back to the sin of the world. You are not going to mess with anything that can keep you out of heaven. The problem with a lot of Christians today, and we really need to check ourselves from time to time, is that we are too earthly minded. We don't focus on, heaven is not in sight. And when whatever you set your mind on, that's what you're going to always be drawn to. But when you're drawn to heaven, when you set your mind on heaven, you're going to be drawn to heaven. Jesus said that where your treasure is, that's where your heart is going to be. And so when you yearn for heaven, or rather when you stay focused on heaven, your heart is automatically going to yearn for heaven, and you're going to disregard. You're not going to allow yourself to be distracted by anything that's going to trip you off. Hebrews 11 says, verse 13, and talking about people, believers just like you and I, who understood this principle, that if they were ever going to make it to the heavenly city, they need to keep their eyes focused on the goal. You cannot attain a goal if you take your eyes off that goal. And so the Bible says in Hebrews 11:13, I'm going to read all the way through 16. He says, all the while acknowledging these set of believers in this hall of faith, confessing that they were strangers. These folks confessed that they were strangers and temporary residents and exiles upon the earth. You need to realize that you are a temporary resident. You are not a permanent resident of the earth. And so these people, the Bible says right here that they talk as they did, show plainly that they are in search of a fatherland, their own country. And then verse 15 says, if they had been thinking with homesick remembrance of that country from which they were emigrants. In other words, if they were keep thinking about the earth, the Bible says they would have found constant opportunity to return to it. So they didn't keep thinking about earthly things. They didn't keep thinking about the pleasures of their sinful flesh. Otherwise, they would have returned to it. You will always return to what you're focused on. But instead, these people said that they were yearning for and aspiring to a better and more desirable country that is a heavenly one. And because these folks, they were always desiring, yearning, they stayed focused on heaven, they made heaven. Friend, the second thing is this. If you want to obtain the gold, make heaven, get heavenly rewards, keep your eyes on heaven. That's going to keep you yearning for heaven and shunning the things, the sinful things of the world. I do trust you were blessed today, friend. If you've not already done so, subscribe to my channel, Knowing God Media, follow all my social media handles, and come back next time as we talk about point number 3 on how to go for gold. God bless you.